Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Joined tonight by the fellas, Cam Beck, Tyson Mall. Fellas, how we feeling? How we doing? We hanging in? Holding on by a thread? How we doing?
What is dead may never die. I think I just want to, before we get into it, I appreciate that every episode you open with like, tonight we're joined by, and then it's just always the same two guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just us.
It's just you guys. It's just the fellas.
I don't know, man. Feeling like it sucks. It sucks what happened. It sucks more how it happened, but it's like going into it, going in with low expectations was nice. A lot less stressful overall. Would have probably in hindsight preferred a blowout, but we got what we got, and we'll remember it forever for better or worse.
Yeah, I think it almost made it a little worse going in with no expectations, and then the way the game happened, and then it just you go in with low expectations, and then the first half happens, and you're just like at a 10. You're at a 10.
You rediscover those hopes.
Like
there you are, Peter.
I see that line of thinking, but I respectfully disagree, man. Losing to BYU when you are supposed to win is just so different.
Worse.
And we'll get into this a little bit. And I didn't expect to say this early in the podcast, frankly, but if you're a BYU fan, you can't be proud of that win. We talked about going into this game, if you lose this game, but if you lose this game, you need to wear a paper bag on your head, and to beat a 4-4 team like that, to have to win like that against the team that's on their third quarterback and who fired their offensive coordinator and who is just in the absolute dredges of historically bad offensive performance, even by their own bad standards. This is the win you're proud of? I don't know. It's cool. It's cool. You beat Utah. We can never take that away from you. And congrats on winning. But I don't know if this is the one that I would be running up the flagpole as a moment,
Yeah,
no, they're proud of it. I've seen
proud.
it too much. I keep peeking on Twitter just because I get more than just sports engagement from it. I get news and stuff, all of it, but then I'll just see stuff come up, and I'm like, what? I'd almost be more embarrassed acting like that after that win. I don't know. They're almost too happy about it, which I get. It's a rivalry game, and it's BYU Utah, but again,
I mean,
that's the game you're most proud of.
They are by pretty much there are measurements for this, and they lead the nation in basically luck this season, and they're just riding that wave, and this game was no different. And I think that, listen, they can be proud. It's fine. It's just I just don't know if history will, or I guess I don't know if the perception is quite what they think it is. It's great. They get their moment, and they've got a winning streak in this series for the first time in over a decade, and that's got to feel great. But it's one of those y'all probably should have won by a lot more, and you shouldn't have needed what you got to do it.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't feel as good for them as it feels bad for Utah, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah.
And if we're being honest, that's what they're so happy about.
Yes.
It's not that
contributor.
It's not that you're dead. It's that they are holding your heart in their hand. And so the only way to beat that is just don't let them have it. You didn't expect to win this game when it started. And if you did, you talked yourself into it. If BYU fans are on your nerves, that's on you.
I feel like that's a shot at me, Cam.
I don't know. Maybe it's a shot at both of you. And maybe it's just because like I don't work with any BYU fans, and so
that's fair.
I logged on today and was just like, peace. I'm just gonna do my job today. A couple of Utah fans were like, "Hey, so the game," and I was like, "No, not today. Let's talk about something else." And they agreed.
Well, lucky you.
I've got a department meeting on Thursday with a guy who made a comment a few weeks ago about the game, and I kind of clapped back at him for a bit, and I'm not looking forward to that meeting at all.
I was
he's a good dude. He's not gonna say anything about like, you know,
yeah.
He'll make a comment and it'll be funny and it'll be fine. But
yeah. I played golf on Sunday morning, and walking up to the first tee box, and one of the guys that I'm playing with is wearing, you know, blue Jordans and a blue hat. And I'm just like, oh, here we go. I got to spend 5 hours. And I got up and it was a Dodgers fan. And I was just like, oh, thank God. I'm like, oh gosh, that was so close. That could have been bad. Because I've got like my Utah bag too. I'm like, if this guy's a BYU fan, that we're going to talk about this for the next 5 hours.
Oh man. Yeah, it's been quite the weekend, to say the least, for those of us that have friends and co-workers that are BYU fans. Certainly heard a lot about it, and we'll continue to hear a lot about it for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, and obviously for BYU, look, regardless of how you won it, you won it. You know, overcame a lot of struggles, and you're, what are they now? 9-0? 9-0 on the season, you know, with pretty manageable slate the rest of the way. But yeah, you're damn proud of that, and frankly, you should be. So
I would be. Like, I wouldn't care how lucky it was. I wouldn't care by the skin of, like, or that half skin of teeth that it took to get there. Like, it's still 9-0. Like,
you went out, you did it.
And listen, like, there's a lot of luck involved in being undefeated. Like even if you need a lot of luck to be undefeated, everyone needs a little to get that point. And so, like, they should be proud. That's a good football team. Like, whether we want to admit it or not, BYU is a good football team this year, and there's no other way around it. They can, you know, it's still everything it was last week. But congrats, you won.
But congrats, yeah. It's interesting, right? BYU, the luck measurables. I don't know how you measure that, but there's certainly measurables out there, favorable calls maybe, and that kind of gets us into the first most important thing from that game. Obviously, the biggest call of the night was the 4th and 10 Kareni Reed sack that was negated by a holding penalty on Zamai Vaughn. And the great debate rages on to this moment, to this very second, whether it was or wasn't a penalty, whether it should have or should not have been called. And look, like I think Joe Klatt said it best, that, hey, the referees set the precedent that, you know, there's a certain style, certain brand of ball that we're going to allow with receivers and cornerbacks being played, and they called it a certain way all game long. Utah's Dorian Singer and other receivers, you know, certainly had moments where you could have maybe thrown that flag, especially based on how that last play was called, and yet it wasn't. But in that moment, it was called. And, you know, sure, you want to point the playbook, the rule definition at me, fine, that's fair. But I think, again, where the frustration comes from is the fact that all game long you did not call that, and in that moment you did. And, you know, I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from on Utah's end of things. So as you guys are watching that play unfold, I was on the field, and, you know, it took a minute to kind of realize what was going on. You know, I'm videoing the crowd at the celebration after the Kareni Reed sack, and then you know, it was kind of hard to hear because it was so loud in there. But they called a penalty. I was just curious to hear what you guys thought about the play and about that call.
if you want, like you said, if you want to throw the rule book about like what's a hold and what's not, like it's disingenuous at best, because if you want to say call it by the rules, you're calling that penalty, that exact play, at least 15, 20 times a game, especially in college. Like it happens every play. I mean, and that's just, wide receivers and DBs. You don't want to talk about all the holds that happen on the line every single play. The ones that get called are like egregious. Got a guy in a headlock, or like, you see the jersey pulled 2 feet behind the guy. Like,
yeah,
to call it in that situation again, when you've been not calling it all game long, really all season long. And 2 things can be true. Utah did not score a single point in the second half.
Yeah.
Utah still had, you still could have stopped them after that play and prevented them from getting into field goal range. I stood up and started like celebrating with my father-in-law when the sack happened. And then like I turned and I still saw I think Logan Fano was high-fiving somebody on the sidelines, some other fans or something. And then I look down and you just see yellow in the bottom right. And I just, you immediately know it's on Utah.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, I mean, and as soon as watching from home, watching it happen in real time, there was the moment but the announcers, were quick the commentators were quick to say, there's a flag in the secondary. And like, it's hard for that to be anything but a defensive penalty, probably holding some sort of illegal contact downfield. And I think the thing in the moment that was most frustrating was everything that you mentioned, Steve, is yes, the rule book is the rule book. And if you show me that play and you want to tell me it was defensive holding, I can't really argue with you. I don't think that it is a dead to rights call in either way. Zamaya certainly had his hands on him. They were locked up together. There was absolutely contact. I think it could go either way. It's a 50-50 call on any play. In the context of the larger game, I don't know if that's a 50-50 call. And for it to happen when it did is just devastating and so impactful. And but again, if you want to point the rule book at me, you're right. I think you're right. I don't think there's much way around it. I think the thing that's most frustrating to me with that play is watch the replay 100 times and you've got Utah defensive linemen getting yanked down on the same play to the ground. And it's just like, oh, so which holding call? Right. It's like, so, because give us a 4th and 10 again, and maybe it's another story. But
yeah,
it, a lot of reasons to be frustrated. The play before with the timeout, it's frustrating too. The ref couldn't get the whistle in his mouth on the replay, and so the whistle didn't happen until after the snap. I don't know if you all saw that or got a glimpse of that during the broadcast. See the ref
with the whistle, but I saw the Kalani.
Yeah, during the broadcast, you see Kalani call it. You see the ref go up with his whistle and just drop it. The whistle misses his mouth, and so he spends a couple seconds trying to figure out how to do his job. And then when he finally does, Retzlaff already has the ball and is moving out of the pocket. It's having those two back to back is especially hard in that situation too. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, get yourself in a situation where you have to make a 4th and 10 stop. Penalties happen. You get yourself in a situation where you have to stop somebody on 4th and 10 and can't do it. A, what does that mean for you? But B, like, this was the very, very, very end of the game. You had so many chances, so many times before, both drives before. And something like, be as mad as you want at the officials, be as mad as you want at a lot of people, but like, the officials didn't make you turn the wrong way on a handoff on a 2nd down that could have picked up a first that would have all but sealed the game. They didn't make a holding call on the next play, or they did make a holding call, but they didn't make the hold on the next play. They didn't, they didn't have that abysmal second half that Tyson mentioned. It's easy and feels really good, I think, to blame this outside force of the officials. I mean, we saw somebody spend $40,000 on that feeling, but it doesn't erase everything you could have done to not have yourself in that situation. You be in the right lane on kickoff, and that game doesn't that doesn't matter. Be in the be in the right place for a handoff, and that doesn't matter. Make a couple more completions, and it just doesn't matter.
We're doing the whole backtrack thing. We need to talk about the guy that spent $40,000 on certain comments in the post game. I
thought that'd be a decent segue, but
it was. And then you kept rehashing what went wrong.
Yeah,
it
was a great segue.
Can I say one thing before we move to Harlan? As much as we want to talk about the holding call on Zemayev, the holding call on Landon King is 10 times worse.
Same thing. If you want to throw the rule book at me, you want to show me the replay and King's got his arm across a guy and you say they threw a hold on this, I'm going to be like, yeah, I mean, you let a guy outside your body and keep contact with him. You're begging the ref to call a hold on you. Like whether you did or not, if I'm a ref and I look up and I see a guy holding a guy like this on the edge, I don't have to think very hard to think that might be a hold. The point just remains like you probably don't need to do that to make that play, to pick up that 3rd and 1. It's 3rd and 1 on an inside run, and King's out there doing something he probably doesn't need to be. And
the guy who was blocking did make the tackle.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, move on. Let's talk about that guy.
Those $40,000 comments. Mark Harlan fined $40,000, publicly reprimanded for his post-game commentary, and obviously had strong words for what he saw. Shared his disdain and feelings about the refereeing, called it the most unprofessional display of refereeing he's seen in his 12 years as athletic director. I think, that's fine. Share that, right? I think, when he started to talk about the Big 12 and their excitement level over it, all right, that's okay. Let's put the mic away a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'll say this. I give him a lot of credit actually, for doing what he did and, voicing his displeasure as loudly as he did, because, I don't know if this was his intention. I don't, who knows, but we're here talking about that. And that's the focus of the game. And it's not about the players. The players have went through a lot this season, and, it hasn't been easy, and that's been the focus. And so for him, I don't think it's intentional. Maybe it was, I don't know, but I'll give him credit for that. I will.
You know what? I'm glad it's good for the program, because it was bad for him.
Yeah.
My goodness was that. And frankly, I don't know how you guys feel about it. We didn't talk about it before. What an embarrassing moment for Mark Harlan. I think that was the most just childish reaction that an athletic director could have in that moment, in my opinion. It was my immediate reaction. My immediate reaction when I saw the video you posted, Steve, was, how did someone post such a convincing deep fake of this so quickly? Like, I thought it was a joke when I first saw it, because I was just like, these comments are kind of ridiculous. And the more I watched it, the more I settled in, and I was like, no, this is obviously real. Steve posted this to his account. Like, this is Steve's account. And
I'm not that fast on a deep fake.
Yeah. And I was just like, obviously, like, Steve's here covering this thing. Like, this isn't a joke. Like, it's certainly not the time. And like, I think it was an embarrassing thing for Mark Harlan to do. as a representative of Utah fans in that moment. I thought it was very reactionary to the fact that he was on the field for the kickoff return that he ultimately got a penalty on. And like, yeah, like imagine my brother-in-law asked me, just at dinner on Sunday, he's like, imagine Utah returns that and it doesn't count because Mark Harlan's 10 yards onto the field. Like, yeah, no wonder he had a blow up at the press conference because like he had to make some sense of that bullshit that he was doing on the football field. Like, it's just like a very, very tough 20 minutes for Mark Harlan, I think. Obviously their emotions were hot and stuff, but like,
yeah,
man, you want to say you have comments for the commissioner? You want to talk to the commissioner in private? Like, be my guest and voice those things. Voice those things. But to come out like you sound like our guy sounded like he was going to storm the Capitol over the end of this game. It's just like grow up. I'm sorry. Like I was embarrassed for Mark Harlan in that moment, frankly.
Yeah, I had two reactions to it. I am the comments about the refereeing. Again, I'll kind of echo Steve. Like, I'll give him like a little bit of credit for like, that's something I think an AD getting up there and being like, I think this was, a horribly officiated game. We hear those comments from coaches all the time. We say those comments as fans all the time. And you got to remember, this is coming from a guy who I believe multiple times, or at least after the Arizona game, took stuff to the conference about the physicality of, the DBs are playing with that's being let go. And then when you lose a game, especially a rivalry game this important, on something like that, I completely understand the frustration and wanting to have your coaches and your players' backs for that. I respect that.
Sounds to me like he got what he asked for.
And it's when you continue the comments again, when a majority of Big 12 fans are, up in arms against Utah fans and against Utah as a program for comments that have been made about not wanting to be in the Big 12. And then especially when you go back and see like, Mark Harlan's tweet about like, I don't remember exactly what was said, but I think it was about Utah in the Big 12. And he said something to the effect of like, are you kidding me? Or are you joking or something? Like you're compounding the bad in that moment when you move away from, okay, the refs did a terrible job, to this is on the conference and I'm gonna talk bad on the conference that we just joined. That's when it gets bad. And then finding out, so when me watching live, when I saw that there was a flag on the final kick return and knowing like, all right, well, just go down now because there's probably a hold or a block in the back or something, because that flag was thrown early. So I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely a hold on somebody. I didn't find out until yesterday. Then I started seeing like video, like, oh, it's because our athletic director is 10 yards on the field screaming at referees on a play that, while unlikely, possibly could have won the game for you.
It's a live ball. The game is happening.
Like, what are you doing?
Absolutely embarrassing.
Like that's the single most embarrassing part. And then adding the comments on at the end of it it's all around a really, really bad look.
He looked
for
like
him and really the department as a whole.
He looked like an angry dad yelling at a little league ref in that moment. Like, it's just like, you shouldn't even be down here. Get away from the football field. Like, don't you have a box up there? Shouldn't you be in your seats? Like, let the people whose job it is to be on the field and talk to these refs. If Kyle Whittingham had gotten that penalty because he was 10 yards on the field, it's a whole different story.
Right.
Like,
it's still bad, but it's still not. It's the head coach who was already down there.
I think that was the best athletic directors in college football.
You don't know who they are.
You don't know who they are because why would you? Their job is to be in an office and to advance the message, the vision, and the mission of your program, to elevate your program through strategic marketing and business decisions and coaching hires. And Mark Harlan just, you can say whatever you want about what he has or hasn't done as at Utah's athletic director, but like he just destroyed years worth of goodwill in a press conference. Like I said, in that moment, I was really confused as to what was happening.
Yeah.
And why it was happening. And then, you see the replays, you see the videos of him out on the field, and you're just like, oh, this makes sense now. And then you think more about it and you're just like, what an absolute fumble by this guy. Like that's a bad day at work.
And again, the confusion that I felt, like, again, immediately thinking it's a hold or a block in the back. And then, the ref through a sea of people says unsportsmanlike conduct on the Utah bench. I was like, did they just like say, screw it, something else happened at the end of the play, so we're just going to call that and call it a game? Like, I was confused.
And the speed at which, the speed at which he just, I'm sorry, the speed at which he was just like, unfortunately, contact on the Utah bench, the game is over. Like, they knew they're the whole play. That rep is just like, the second this thing is dead, we're getting the hell out of here because this guy is on my last nerve.
Well, and I thought, now thinking back on it and thinking back on like how he called it and the look on his face, like I wouldn't have been surprised now looking back if he would have shut his mic off, turned around and punched Harlan. The way he looks like.
Harlan's press conference would have had a little more juice if that would have happened. If that had happened, I would have been like, no, Mark Harlan did exactly what he was supposed to do in that press conference. He's out there with a bloody nose, his eyes all swollen. It's just like, I hate this conference. I hate that rep. I hate the way that
just
you
the
walk.
gang of reps.
You talk. I hate the way that you dress.
We're just tell him. Oh man, yeah, that whole moment, man, that was crazy. I didn't know what was going on. I saw the clip afterwards. I thought it was just an additional penalty that they called on Utah. I thought the game was over and they flagged Harlan and just call it over. I had no idea that was the actual penalty. It was just crazy. Crazy. And so where was I going to go with that? I
don't know. I cut you off. I'm sorry. I had some feelings still to get out.
No. All right. Whittingham's comments. Obviously you could tell he was pretty pissed. He was frustrated, made it clear what he was referring to with his commentary, but made sure to toe the line, stay within, the ropes here and not cross that line. He didn't want to be the guy paying $40K this weekend. He knew, I don't know if he knew.
Mark Harlan was behind the curtain off stage like, I'll pay it. Say it. Say it.
Pay it with your chest, Win. Yeah, dude. So this is what I was going to share. Harlan. So Harlan just kind of walking everybody through kind of how it all went down. So we get into that room, that press room, and, there's a door behind that wall. And when it opens, it's either players or coach or a Utah official just kind of walking in. And so we hear the door open. I grab my phone, just kind of like, oh, time to get ready, and see Harlan. And it's kind of that relaxation, like, okay, it's not the players, it's not coach. I'm going to chill. And then he does that, and he normally walks to the back of the room, but he walks up the podium and just like, oh, this is
right.
This
like
is
your immediate
moment.
Reaction is like, was Kyle Whittingham just fired?
Yeah, this was not normal. And so, obviously film it and then, he lets it fly and made clear his feelings. So just kind of a crazy situation. Then Whit comes in, a little bit later and shares his disdain. And, I thought his comments today were pretty interesting, just sort of citing the, that there was a lot of emotion in that locker room after the game. And, players were upset and distraught and, disappointed in the loss. And I think that sort of fueled Harlan and Whittingham to say the things that they did, to approach their post-game press conferences in the manner that they did. I think it says a lot about the way that Whittingham is willing to, I don't want to say create drama, but put up a shield for his players, to create. And I'm not saying he told Harlan to do, that's not what I'm saying, but I just think we've seen it over the years, right? That he's always willing to take the blame, to take the fault, to protect his players. And I thought that, whether they intended to do that or not, Harlan and Witt did that with their post-game presser.
Maybe Witt's the one who paid for it. Maybe Witt was Hermit, like hooded Kermit, and like whispering in his ears, just like, go up and say something. Go up and say something. Go talk about their professionalism.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I know, and you're right. It's like to make the moment about them in a sense, like, sure, if that's how this all ends up, like, then what a masterclass of PR, and what a masterclass of ego death in that moment, because boy did they take one on the chin for their players if that's what they decided to do, because and Mark Harlan specifically, like I said, like, it was tough. It was tough to watch as a Utah fan. But to your point, that was the story as soon as that happened. And you want to talk about why BYU fans are so gassed up? That's why they are. They got that out of your athletic director. They got that response.
Yeah, they're loving it. So it's just another rivalry moment, man. This rivalry always seems to deliver those types of moments. Unfortunately, it was Utah's Utah on Utah's end this go around, but this rivalry always seems to deliver those types of moments on a pretty consistent basis. So, with that out of the way, those were obviously the big story, the elephant in the room of that game, if you will. So let's kind of unpack. I mean, Tyson, you already kind of just threw everything out the bag, grabbed everything out the suitcase and hucked it throughout the room. But, obviously there was 30 minutes of second half football that Utah had to create some sort of additional cushion on the scoreboard, right? 2 quarters, unable to put another single point on the board is pretty disappointing. And, Utah offense had a couple of possessions in really great field positions, started right around midfield. And that, again, is it speaks to the defense and their ability to perform. I know in the fourth quarter alone, the defense had, after they gave up the touchdown, there were 2 stops before that final drive. And, the defense, they got their stops. As I was preparing my story, that was going to be the story, that Utah finally got the stops that had eluded them in the games past, but the offense could not put together a drive in that fourth quarter to eat the clock and or put additional points on the board. And it's unfortunate the second half offense just disappeared. Considering what we saw in the first half, there was a lot of excitement. Finally, we see Baldwin, we see points, we see them get into the red zone and score touchdowns in the red zone. It was exciting. I thought Brandon Rosa was fantastic, and unfortunately just unable to get anything going in that second half, and that is ultimately what led to Utah taking the loss.
I think that, and to your point about the defense, they almost got the stop on the touchdown drive. They had them to 4th and short, and just, again, credit BYU for punching through and getting the touchdown a couple plays later. But they were that close again to stopping them again. And just, I don't know what it is about Utah. We have this Utah fans, as bad as the offense gets, the complaining I see is about the defense every time, every game. I don't understand it. There were a lot of questions I saw in the second half of just like, okay, but on the touchdown drive, what happened? Why did that happen? I'm just like, on the touchdown drive, the singular one. Like, that's the thing, is like, if you're going to keep that offense out of the end zone on all but one drive, you won incredibly. What an amazing day for the defense. If you would have told me that Utah only let BYU's offense get in the end zone that one time, I'd have been like, yeah, that's a phenomenal game, a phenomenal game plan. Like, or I guess if you would have told me in that situation that's how BYU would have got, I'm just like, yeah, listen, 21 points keeping them at 22 points has to be enough at home. It has to be. And again, against a good offense, against an offense that moves the ball around. The questions about, like, why do you go zone in that situation? Why you've been playing so well running man. It's like, the truth is, the reason you do that is because you're trying to force turnovers in that situation, and running zone blitz with DBs sitting behind the play is the best way to do that, is to have your DBs facing the quarterback when that's happening. Like, because the offense can't do anything, you're trying to make a big play. You're trying to steal a possession. Like, yeah, BYU took advantage of it. They ran the perfect plays to sit underneath that zone, to keep guys over the top and to run a guy underneath. It was just good offense against defense that they were mixing up to try to make a big play. But again, it shouldn't have mattered, because in the moment, if you're Morgan Scalley, you can afford to do that because your defense has played so well otherwise. The offense has to be the story here. Everything on the defensive side of the ball, the players, the coaches, the scheme, the game plan, everything was phenomenal. An A+ on that side of the field the whole game. If you think anything otherwise, like, you're just out of your mind. You're just wrong. Yes, they gave up a touchdown drive. It happens. Watch another college football game, I beg you. Teams score touchdowns in college football. Like, it's what happens.
Yes.
I'm just so tired of the offense going out and putting up F performances every week, and somehow it's just like, I can't believe Morgan Scalley's the next guy. What a disgrace. It's just like, how can you possibly think something is wrong with what he's doing in this game? He's the only bright spot in what's happening right now. I truly cannot wrap my head around it. Like, if you want to be mad and you're just placing your anger at this program on a guy, pick a different one. He's the only guy who showed up this year. Like, my God, I truly can't fathom, like, that line of thinking, and especially watching that game. Like, how can you have watched that game and think anything but the defense played amazing? Sorry, did not mean to go on that rant about the defense, but just I just can't say enough good things about what they've done this year, considering all the injuries they've had, considering that they're getting absolutely nothing on the offensive side. Forget about special teams, which it feels like a long lost memory that Utah used to have decent special teams. Man. And like, I just let's focus all that negative energy on whatever's going on the offensive side of the ball, which is absolutely warranted. You absolutely cannot, and again, you cannot do what you did in the first half and do so well and not have a plan for when BYU adjusts in the second half.
Crazy. Yeah.
That's the thing to me, is it comes back to the question of, like, why aren't things working? The truth is, the simplest answer is because BYU changed what they were doing and Utah didn't. And like, when you don't have things if you don't have something in your bag for, we're going to do this on offense in the first half, which means in the second half, BYU is going to do this. And and therefore we are going to do this completely different or somehow different thing. If you don't have that third piece, what do you expect to happen? That's a very good defense you faced. That's a good, smart defensive staff. If you're not going to play chess with them, yeah, they're going to beat you. They're just too good. They can, if you're not going to mix things up, they can just line up and beat you. Their defense is that much better than Utah's offense. And like, it showed. I don't know. That's the most frustrating thing to me is, and again, I don't know what we expect, considering Andy Ludwig is 2 weeks off of being fired, right? Or 3 weeks, I guess, 2 games off of being fired. And like, Bajakian is in a position he didn't think he was going to be in. But like, that again has to be the story of why are there no offensive adjustments in the second half? Because we keep seeing it. And again, in this game, it was just, you finally show us something, you finally have some momentum, and just make nothing of it.
Yeah. To echo everything you just said, like you can have like, I mean, I had somewhat small gripes with Utah going zone. I completely understand like the the thought and the mentality behind it, because like you said, that's about as good as you can do to try and again make those plays, and BYU countered it perfectly. And sometimes that's football. Like, you can call a perfect defense, but if the perfect offense is called against that, that's what happens. Like, you give up big chunk yards, and that's what happened. But again, 22 points, 15 of them on offense. That has to be enough. And it's just, it gets more and more frustrating. And I can speak to this as a player too. If you think you're frustrated as a fan at the offensive play calling, Mekhi Bernard, Dorian Singer, these guys, especially Mekhi and Dorian, like, it's just how much you can tell that they put into the effort that they play with every single game. I can guarantee half the time when a play got called, they were like, well, this isn't going anywhere. Or like, this isn't going to work. Like, as a player, you like, and especially when you're in the game so much, like, you understand what's working and what doesn't. And when stuff gets called that isn't going to work, it's 10 times more frustrating than you could ever be as a fan with the offensive play calling, which makes me even more, especially for guys like Mekhi and Dorian, like, just gutted to have to endure this season as the players that they are, and the effort that they've put in to watch and to see like where the season's gone is heartbreaking for me for them. But like Cam said, like, it all comes down to, you didn't score a single point in the second half. You went, hang on, I just had it up. In the second half, you went gentleman's 3 and out, pick, punt after 9 plays, which you got something, but you still only got 36 yards. Gentleman 3 and out, and then 3 and out when you're on your own side of the field is absolutely just mind-numbingly frustrating as a player and as a fan, obviously. Like,
honestly,
going out,
shout out to Burmeister, who had a fantastic day.
Yeah, great. That was the one bright spot of special teams. Burmeister was fantastic. The one touchback he had was just
checked up at the one,
unlucky bounce,
2-yard bounce. Yeah. That bounced right at the one, and then landed a yard into the end zone.
Punt that 3 yards shorter, and you're down on him on the one. Like, honestly, as good of an argument as any for keeping Utah in the game as long as they did. He pinned BYU pretty far back a lot, despite, again, just getting nothing from the offense.
He pinned him inside the 20 on every punt except for that touchback. Like, even like the far, like, he had some booming ones where, Kingston had nowhere to go if he on the ones he actually didn't fair catch. Like, yeah. Now I'm getting more frustrated again.
I mean, it has to be what I'm staring at the stat sheet right now. And the thing that keeps jumping out to me is like 2 things. 1, 3 offensive turnovers. I'm
trying to figure out that third one. There was the 2 interceptions, one by Rose and the other by Alford. Come on, what are we doing with Damian Alford on a trick play? Why are we calling that in that moment? Like, that's boneheadedness to the team. Like, what are we thinking? Brandon Rose, explainable miscommunication. Player ran the wrong route. Maybe it was called differently. I don't know, but just a clear miscommunication between quarterback receiver, and it was thrown to the wrong place, and or the receiver wasn't in the wrong place. Just one of those things. Third turnover. It was just downs.
I think they're counting the final kickoff return that BYU recovered after a fumble Ruski nonsense.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because they don't have it in the
officially the penalty was declined because that's what ended the game.
Gotcha.
And so it's, I think officially, technically, that's a recovered fumble.
So 2 offensive turnovers.
Yeah. 2 offensive turnovers, but that jumps out to me. I mean, the throw by Brandon Rose is tough, but I mean, again, it happens. The throw by Alford is a head scratcher for a lot of reasons. My immediate response is like we won't let QBs throw over the middle because an interception is just too costly, but we're gonna let our receiver who hasn't played a down yet this season throw that.
Just huck it. Yep.
That's the thing that, like, again, you want to get a spark, you want to get it. We can talk about also that, like, Alfred had a one-on-one matchup if he goes to the left, if he goes to the middle of the field instead of the wheel route off the side. Like, he had the deep post coming open on the far side. If he takes one more beat and throws it left instead into a way better situation, forget a bit. I don't even care about that. My thought is just, like, as protective of the ball as this offense is, to a fault. We've talked, I don't know, I believe we've talked on here about Utah actually asking its quarterbacks and telling its quarterbacks not to make throws over the middle because that's where balls get intercepted, and like actively discouraging behavior that might increase the chances of an interception because, God forbid, that is truly the ultimate sin a quarterback can commit. We would rather you met your ultimate Gatorade cooler than threw an interception. And like, we think that we can just let Alford throw one up into quadruple coverage with one person out. It's just maddening because I don't know what this team's offensive philosophy is. And again, Bajakian has been doing this for 3 weeks now. There probably is no offensive philosophy. Credit for them for trying something, but like in that moment, at that time, to that player, I don't know. Hey, that one was tough.
The thing too about like plays like that, like, I mean, I think it was Zacharias Williams that was running that deep post, or was it Keithy? It might have been Keithy.
Don't remember for sure.
Anyway. The thing about plays like that is, to make it simple, they're not telling Alford to throw anywhere except for Mackay. Like, that was, all right, we're going to throw it to you and you're going to throw it to Mackay. It's not sit back and maybe the deep post will be open. That's just trying to clear out the safety. Like, at no point was Alford even thinking that there was a second guy for Utah out there that he could have thrown to. It's the one read you're throwing it to Mackay. It's not even a read. Like, you just throw it up there.
And again, we talk about this a lot. If the people watching at home know what's going to happen, the defense definitely does. Do you want to know why Utah hasn't thrown a wheel route since those first 2 games? Because that's what's going to happen. When you do run a wheel route, there's going to be 4 guys sitting on top of it because they know that's where you're going to throw it. Why would they have Alford throw it there? They should know that BYU is going to see the wheel route and jump at it. He should have only been looking at the post. They shouldn't have thought the post is going to lure the safety away. They should have thought the wheel route was going to lure the safety away, because that's what they've shown on film all season, is that that's their big play. And so, like, it's crazy to me that this offense seems, I want to say arrogant, but I don't think they're good enough to be arrogant. It just seems stupid. Like, it's like they're not thinking about what the defense might do. They're just out there trying to play 7-on-7. And it's like, if you would have showed me that route, combination, the first thing I would have said was, well, they're going to jump all over this wheel route because you've already shown it to them twice. You've already shown you can score on this twice. Of course they're going to jump on this. They're going to be waiting for you to run this. God forbid Dijon Stanley's in the game. That's like the biggest signal there would be. But even with Mackay, and then we saw it. You have Alford throw it up, and despite the double pass and then hopefully getting some advantage there, like, they're just sitting on a wheel route. It just maddening to me.
Credit to Mackay for doing everything he could to sell what he was doing, because please go back and watch it. He like walks for like 5 yards, like he's supposed to like be trying to like block a linebacker or something. And then he takes off, but both the linebacker and the corner didn't even like look at him, just immediately started running backwards.
Because again,
I can guarantee when Mackay saw that, he goes, "Oh well, this isn't going to end well."
Because again, why would you? If you see Damian Alford come into the game for the first time in the season, isn't your immediate thought like, this is weird? Something's up. It's not like, oh, I guess he's just figured out how to play on this offense in game 9. Like your immediate thought is like, hey, number 9's in. What does that mean? Because he hasn't been in the scouting report. Like what are they trying to do? There's some new wrinkles here. Big time check. That's how a smart defense would react. The whole thing is just puzzling. Like, give him a couple of snaps first is all I ask. Like, let him run that action one time before, and just just very puzzling. I wish they had that to do over again, because boy, do I think they probably underthought that one. But I mean, there were still moments, right? Like there were moments where it was close. Like I think about a couple of balls that went Singer's way when he just couldn't quite get a hand on it. There was the one to Mackay down the sideline that was just out of his fingertips. Mackay just put his hands up a few steps too early, because he plays running back, not receiver, right? Like, but if he would have just kept his arms up and taken 2 more steps and then put his arms out late, that's a touchdown. That's probably enough. It just the little things. A play here, a play there, and you have that. And that's where I come back to the penalty. Is it's like you had this game won on 10 different plays before that, and couldn't pull it off. So to blame it on that one, and not to mention the fact that so they have a first down on the 15-yard line. Great. Just don't let him go down the field in a minute. Like that's the thing we kind of ignore too, is like it's like, sure, you gave him this penalty, but like this penalty didn't put the ball on your 30. It put the ball on their 15 or 20 or whatever it was. Like they had to drive a whole field in a 2-minute situation, and you let them. Yeah. And it's, I mean, you had plenty of chances still to not let them do that. I don't know. I think that Utah lost this game.
Sure.
Like
absolutely.
All due respect to Mark Harlan, which I think you've heard the respect in my voice talking about him this episode. But like, give me a break.
Yeah. It's tough. Yeah, no, it's tough. And, with this, it feels like, again, Utah had multiple opportunities to do what they needed to do to secure the win, right? Whether defensively on that final possession, whether offensively, again, the defense got the stops. They got 2 stops in that in the fourth quarter. The Jack Baumeister had 2 punts, I think, pinned inside the 20 that quarter. Even inside the 10, if I remember correctly. BYU started at the 20, their first possession of the fourth quarter, but then they started at the 4 and then again at the 9-yard line for that final one. So Jack did a good job. Utah got the stops. They forced a 3 on out, on that first possession. 5 plays later, on that second possession, the defense got another stop. I shouldn't say 5 plays later, but 5 plays on the second possession for BYU, and they punt. The offense, again, you're set up at the 46-yard line, at your own 46-yard line, and then again on the BYU 49-yard line on your final 2 possessions at 8:37 left in the fourth quarter when you start at the 46, and 4:50, and then again at the 4:55 mark when you take over at the BYU 49. You've got to find a way to get points, on one of those 2 drives, and the fact that you didn't is just it's brutal. And you go 3. Not only do you not get points, you don't sustain a drive. You go 3 and out on both of those possessions and net -6 yards on those 2 possessions. So just tough. And in that moment, you have to absolutely find a way to put something together. Like as demanding as Kyle Whittingham is of the defense, and as much as they expect from the defense, in that moment, obviously, context is, you're going to consider that, given everything that the offense has been through this year. You don't have your guys, but in those moments, you have to demand that they get something, that they put together a drive, that they eat up, at least a few minutes. You've got to put together at least a 3-4 minute drive to eat the clock. And you have to demand that of that offense. And the fact that they, again, go 3 and out, it's just tough. And that is ultimately, I think, sort of the difference here.
If I'm the defense, I maybe not in the locker room, just a little too raw. Maybe not right after the game. If I'm the defense and I allow 1 touchdown to BYU and it's not till the 4th quarter of that game, I let them in the end zone once and it took them 3.5 quarters to do it. And that's what I get out of my offense. I have words for them. Like, if not hands for them, frankly. Like, I don't want to stoke division in that locker room, but like at a certain point, if I'm the defense, I'm just like, hey, you boys go look in the mirror. I don't know if y'all have seen the movie Fury. Probably an underrated war movie, probably my favorite war movie, actually. There's a scene from it at the beginning where there's a Nazi coming out of a trench and the main character doesn't shoot him, and because he's just a little bit too hesitant, and that Nazi ends up killing a squad, like blows up a tank, kills a bunch of guys, and Brad Pitt pulls the guy out, the kid who didn't make it, and points at him and points at the tank and says, "That's your effing fault." And that's what I would be saying if I was the defense to the offense. I'd put the box score of this game up on the wall and I'd point at it every single day and say, "That's your effing fault."
That hurts, man. I love that movie. That hurts. Oh, that would hurt so bad. Ouch.
True, man. Like at a certain point, yeah. It's like you gotta take some personal accountability, and like only one part of this team has showed up every week, and they played again. Like I don't think you can play a much more flawless game than that. That's a good BYU team.
Yeah.
And I keep saying this, but I just cannot stress it enough. 1 offensive touchdown allowed has to be enough at home. It has to be.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. Crazy to say that. Like, that's crazy. Oh, man. Yeah, defense played lights out. Man, just crazy. Well, fellas, I think we've aired enough grievances for the game. I don't know that we'll get fined. Maybe we will. I don't know. But appreciate you both. Any final thoughts before we put a bow on this one?
Buffs are frauds. Buffs are frauds. Go Utes. Utah's gonna get a rivalry win this weekend because the Buffs are frauds. Listen, if Utah beats Colorado this weekend, Buffs are
holy
frauds.
moly, man. Yeah. Big frauds. Just the biggest.
You're going to lose. So, like I said about this BYU team, you're going to lose to this Utah team? Colorado? Yeah. You're going to lose to this Utah team? Man. This is the one?
The self-retweets of all the Buffs are frauds, just going to be popping, man. It's going to be crazy.
Man, like you couldn't, you lost to the one last year. Whatever, Luke Batari beat you, but that was in Salt Lake, whatever. But you're going to lose to this Utah team? You're going to lose to
crazy,
this
man.
4-5 Utah team coming to your house? Oof. Buffs. I'm excited for the Buffs to be fraudulent. I have a bad feeling they might not be, but boy, if they are, it's going to heal it's going to fill a lot of holes in my heart if Utah wins next week.
Crazy. Oh man. Well, we'll see. We'll see this week. Obviously, big test with Colorado. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, good players, but we'll see. We'll see. Camp, Tyson, I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. This has been the Utah Blockcast. Signing off.